All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about fractions and working with fractions, because we're going to have to be able to add and subtract different amounts of fractions onto sizes that we already have. Just note that when we're adding and subtracting, dividing, multiplying fractions, I am going to only be giving you sizes that you would typically see on a tape measure. Okay, we want to make it relevant to what you're learning in here. So I'm not going to give you odd sizes that maybe you would see in your math class. We're not doing like 1/6 of a foot or 2/3. Okay, you don't typically see that on a tape measure. So if we're looking here, and when we do this, I would prefer that you don't use a calculator that does fractions for you. Okay, we want you to be able to navigate these on your own a little bit and be able to add some of your fractions together as you're working on your projects and not have to run and get your calculator that automatically does stuff for you. You can write it on a board, scratch it out, and figure it out. All right, so if we're looking at this, for example, 1/16 plus a quarter, how do we figure this out? So we're going to find a common denominator. So typically when we talk about the common denominators that you're going to see for measuring, you're going to just look at the biggest number. So the 16th is the biggest bottom number. We're going to find a common denominator. So I'll rewrite this for you. 1/16 plus, now we got to get quarter into 16. So 4/16, and we do that by taking 4 times what is 16? That's 4. So 4 times 4 will give you 16. You do the same to the top. 1 times 4, so 4/16. And now you can just add straight across. 4 plus 1 is 5. 5, and then we just keep the denominator. So 5/16. Now the top number is odd. So for the most part, that's going to tell us it's not divisible by 2. Okay, so it's not reducible. Okay, any questions with that? Finding the common denominator. Let's try another one. Let's do 2/8 plus 5/16. Now again, we're finding the common denominator, which is typically our tallest number. Okay, sorry, our biggest number. So 16ths, we got to get 2/8 to 16. 8 times what is 16? 2. So we're going to take both of these numbers by 2, and we're going to get 2 times 2 is 4. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 5/16, and that is 4 plus 5 is 9/16. Okay, hopefully not as scary as you were anticipating, and hopefully will relieve some of that stress. Again, we're only going to be doing things that are relevant to the tape measure. Look at some subtraction now. So if we're going to go 15/16 minus 1/4. What are we going to do? We got to get to 16. 16 is the biggest denominator, so we're going to keep 15/16, and we're going to subtract 4. We got to get that to 16, so 4 times 4 will get you 16. 1 times 4 is 4, and now we can simply subtract. 15 minus 4 should give us 11/16. If you see something I'm doing wrong, let me know. I made a mistake earlier. I don't want to teach you wrong, so keep me on my toes. All right, subtraction and adding are very similar. Okay, you're finding the common denominator and then doing the subtraction. You would not see this in reverse from me. I would not give you 4/16 minus 15/16 because we're not really wanting negative numbers for this process. Okay. Usually when you're measuring a board, you're measuring a long board and you're subtracting a small size. You're not working with the small board and subtracting a big size. It just isn't really relevant. Okay, let's look at another one. We're going to do a mixed problem here. So let's do 7/8 minus 3. No, we better make that bigger. Minus half plus 5/16. 3/16. Okay, how do we do this? Again, we're finding the common denominator. If we look at this, the biggest number is our common denominator. So we need to get 2 to equal 16. And we do that by taking it times 8. So we would have, and we need to get 7/8 to 16, and we do that by taking it times 2. So what we do to the bottom, we do to the top. So 7 times 2 is 14. 8 times 2 is 16. Keep the subtraction sign. And we're going to take 8 times 1 is 8. And 2 times 8 is 16. Plus 3/16. So now that we have the same denominator, we can simply do our math. 14 minus 8, 6, plus another 3 is 9. So we'd be 9/16, keeping that denominator the same. Look right so far? Okay. How about some multiplication? If we're going to take 1/8 of an inch and we want to lay it out equally 3 times, or we want to multiply it 3 times, how do we do this problem? Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to remember that our whole number is a fraction, right? 3 is the same thing as 3/1. Then we're going to simply multiply across. 1 times 3 is 3. 8 times 1 is 8. So if you just take 1/8 times 3, you should end up with 3/8 as your number. Seem too hard? You're not going to lose sleep over this, are you? Nobody's going to lose some sleep. Kind of feel okay with this idea. How about 5/16 times 2? Again, 2 is the same thing as 2/1. So 5 times 2 is 10. 16 times 1 is 16. And 10/16 is the answer. But we got to remember to reduce. So 10/16 is the same thing as 5/8. And we know that because 10 can be divided by 2. 10 is an odd or an even number. Even numbers are divisible by 2, so we can reduce. All right, how about division? We want to take half of 3/4. So 3/4, I don't have a division sign, so I'm going to have to use the fraction sign again. 2. 3/4 divided by 2. Okay, so just like before, our whole numbers are fractions, 2/1. Now, division really isn't something that we want to do on here. So we're going to rewrite this. We're going to do 3/4. We're going to multiply because we like multiplication. It's easy to do. 3/4 times, and when we times it, we have to inverse the number. So we're going to have 1/2. And then we're going to do our math. 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 2 is 8. So 3/8 is our number. Okay, so division really isn't a function we're going to do with fractions. We have to multiply, so we need to do the inverse of a number. So again, let's look at another one. Let's do 5/8 divided by 2. Okay, or let's try 4. Let's see how that works. 4 is the same thing as 4/1, so we're going to write it that way. Now we're going to invert it. We're going to take 5/8. It helps to write correctly. 5/8 times 1/4. And we can simply multiply across. 5 times 1 is 5. 8 times 4 is 5/32. Now, does 5 can't be divisible by 2, so that would be our answer, 5/32. Now that is a unit you would see on a tape measure. 30 seconds are halves of a 16th. So on a tape measure, if you're looking at a tape measure and you have a 16th, it would be right directly in half. So you'd count every halves. You'd be, 1 32nd, 2 32nd would be a 16th, 3 32nd, 4 32nd would be an 8th, 5 32nd would be just slightly bigger than an 8th. Okay? Any questions with those?